You're listening to
the Beer O'Clock, the Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock, and this is the Beer O'Clock Show. My name is Mark, and joining me, as always, is my beer buddy, Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Right, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Pretty good. This is our penultimate studio show as the Mark and Steve Happy Hour, or whatever the fuck this thing is called. And joining us to start putting the chairs up on tables, but to also ensure the beer is still flowing, is one of our longest supporters, not a long time supporters. He's not that long, and a good friend of the show, Justin Mason. Hello, Justin.
Good evening, chaps. How's things?
Very good. It's great to have you back after Steve put you on forced hiatus.
Yes.
I only rested him for one season.
Back by popular demand.
The scratches on the studio door of him trying to get back in. And just...
Yeah, that's true. To be honest, I mean, I do think Justin is. He's got the honourable title of being our most featured guest, I think, ever, isn't he?
I think so. You're getting another notch on the belt tonight.
Yeah.
Well, there's a double irony tonight because when I was first contacted you guys, it was to pick you up on your pronunciation of another Belgian beer, which was the pronunciation of Saison or Saison, I don't know if it's called, or something like that. And then we're doing a Belgian beer with pronunciation issues, but we'll get to those.
I knew you'd love that on last week's show, mate.
It did tickle me, I must
in our defence, or maybe to our detriment, there has been about 3 years since then, so if we haven't improved our pronunciation since then, we're in trouble. At least we don't call it Saisons anymore.
Yes.
We've had a few more Belgians as well. Anyway, this week we have from the Brouwerij Boon an 8% Gueze called Mariage Parfait. How was that?
Nearly. Unsurprisingly, considering how it's spelt on the bottle, it's actually pronounced Boon.
Oh, is
as
it?
in Beaune, yes. Yeah.
It's all the other fucking words that I looked up how to pronounce, not Boon.
Yeah, the one. Everything else was perfect, apart from the name of the guy who owns the brewery and brews the beer, Frank Boon. But never mind.
Sorry, Frank. Anyway, before we get to the beer, what have we been drinking this week, chaps? Justin, guest of honour, let's start with you, mate. What have you been drinking?
Couple of beers and note. One particular time a Root of All Evil, which was a beetroot Hefeweizen. It's quite a strange beer. It's oddly refreshing, and you can taste the beetroot in it quite often with beers where they've got beetroot added. As to whether it actually works, jury's still out on that one, but it's worth a try if you come across it, although it's not cheap in the can. I've had a few from Pope Yard as well, brewery that not many people seem to get hold of. And Steve, don't worry, I will be bringing some to the bottle share fairly soon.
I'm sure you're doing that just to wind me up. It seems to be a feature from all our guests now. Let's see how we can wind Steve up on the beers we've been drinking.
Well, just over a week ago, I got invited up to, I sort of semi-invited myself. I was going to St Albans for the day, just to have a look round. And I invited myself over to Coma HQ, and they were kind enough to show me around, which was interesting, but not a beer on premises, which was interesting. And I went into the beer shop in St Albans and picked up a load of Pope's Yard beers. The first one, Brewitish, which is an unhopped Bretted sour, brewed with yarrow, mugwort, and nettles. Lovely beer, tart citrus, nice, quite vegetable flavours. Stunning. I've never had a beer like it. Galaxian IPA, which was a solid IPA brewed with Galaxy. Then Luminaire, which is a good example of a golden ale, brewed with Galaxy and Goldings. And then interesting Supraluna, which was a sour mash semi-wild version of the Luminaire, which was a lovely sour beer, lovely notes of breaded dough, like peaches, and a good peppery finish. And at the weekend, I noticed that White Hag had their second birthday party. Not been able to go over to Ireland to do it. To go there, I did have their Puka, which is the dry hop lemon sour, which is a fantastic lovely lemony beer. It tastes like freshly squeezed lemon. So that's just a sample of some of the goodness I've had this week.
Very good. How about you, Stevie?
I have finally seen the light this week, and after many people banging on about it and going right back to the beginning of this series, even Sparky Wright banging on about a brewery called Odyssey, who a new brewery in Herefordshire. I finally got my hands on some of their beers through eBrea. Now they specialise in doing big beers with bold flavours, so don't expect to see any saisons, sours, bitters, pale ales or anything like that in their range. They're simply specialising in IPAs and big stouts. And a couple that I had at the weekend, I had their Citra Fiend Light, which was absolutely stunning. It was Citra all the way through. It was lovely, all the sort of like citrusy orange lemon flavours that you'd expect. And the best thing in as well is that they put their beers in 500ml bottles, so they're really drinkable and there's a lot of it. And then I had their Hop Fiend Double IPA, which was just off the charts good. So really keep your eye out for Odyssey Brew Co, because I think they're going to be quite an up-and-coming brewery in the next year or so. So that was really my highlight of the weekend. That and the fact that I poured a few pints of Cannonball into my face when I was in Leeds last week on one of the hottest days of the year, and it was the perfect remedy for the heat.
Very good.
What about yourself, mate? I noticed that you had sneaked back to the Draft House in Old Street yet again.
I was just walking past when I tripped, and somehow I ended up upstairs at the bar. It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Just went in on a Friday just for a quick couple while I was waiting for the missus to finish work. They had some nice beers on that, as they always do, but they had the Huckleberry Amber Ale from Wiper and True, which on a warm afternoon was spot on. Just really lovely and light and juicy. We've tasted of Huckleberry, no idea. And the other one was Fresh from the Wild Beer Co, which again was very nice, light and refreshing for a sunny Friday afternoon. So yeah, that was my lot for the week, because I was driving on the weekend, so wasn't so bad. Anyway, Steve, have you got any news for us, mate?
Of course, mate. Quite a varied batch this week. So first up, the Great British Pub Awards finalists were released last week. Quite a list of pubs and bars in a number of different categories. I'm not going to go through them all, other than to say that the finalists in each category were chosen from around 1,300 entries across the 16 categories, which will lead to members of the judging team visiting the pubs. The winners will be announced and selected at a ceremony on the 5th of October in London. Just a few that I wanted to pick out. There are a few that have been nominated from Essex, so I'm not sure if Justin's picked up on this or seen this, but certainly within the best beer, bar, stroke, pub, three that stand out are the Craft Beer Co in Leather Lane, so that's the original Craft Beer Co in Clerkenwell, the Grove in Huddersfield, which are two solid boozers, and then the Griffin in Housestead, which I think I might be a little bit surprised about, but having never been in there, I can't really comment. Justin, any thoughts on the Griffin getting nominated in that shortlist?
No, it's not a pub that I would immediately go to if I was in Housestead. So, no, I have walked past it, but not been in. No, I'll have to search that out. It's a good excuse to see Sean anyway. So
yeah, there you go. You can add to your list. Next one is Hawkshead Brewery at the weekend did an unprecedented brew day at their Northern Craft Festival. So they had brewers from 13 top craft breweries got together to make a special collab beer to commemorate the 10th beer festival. Now the breweries that were involved in this were, and this is like the who's who of brewing in the UK right now, Magic Rock, Thornbridge, Pivovar, Ashover, Cloudwater, Marble, Quantum, Siren, Buxton, Fine, Runaway and Roosters, as well as Hawkshead being involved in that. So that's a hell of a collab. there were a lot of cooks stirring that broth, I would have thought. The beer, unsurprisingly, that was brewed was a highly hot session IPA, and that'll be available in a few weeks if people want to get their hands on that and give that a go. Other news, the Craft Beer channel, the fantastic guys from YouTube, have launched their new website this week, thecraftbeerchannel.com. You can now find all their videos and all the other bits that they're up to, including news about some books that they'll be launching later on in this year, so head on over and check that out. And then finally in this week's news, and this is fantastic, mate, and I'm going to put this all down to us inspiring a generation of people to get involved in podcasting. So another new beer podcast appeared this week called Parched and Peckish. Now this is a new podcast which is a collab between Sam, who used to be one of the beer talkers on that podcast, and a guy by the name of Nate Nolan, who's into his food and wine. And the slant on this particular podcast, as the title might give away, is they are reviewing not just beers, but they're going to be talking wines, and they're going to be talking food on there as well. So if that's your sort of thing, you can follow them on Twitter at Parched Peckish, and you can download their podcast on iTunes.
Very good.
You're welcome.
I didn't say thank you.
I know, but I'm good at this shit.
Anyway, let's get on to...
Sorry, I don't know if you know... Do you know, you've met Nate, both of you, Nate Nolan, Mr. Drink and Eat on Twitter.
Yeah,
I've
certainly
familiar
met
to you?
Nate.
Yeah, you know Nate, yeah.
No.
Yeah, he's a lovely, nice bloke, so might be worth a listen to, that one.
Anyway, let's get into this week's beer, which is the Mariage Parfait from Brouwerij Boon. 8% Gueze. It's got a little it's got a wine cork stop with the wire thing around.
I'm really scared.
Unfortunately, this being an audio podcast, you can't see what a twat I'm making of myself trying to get it off.
Don't forget, turn the bottle, not the port.
There we
that's
go.
too late for that one.
No, didn't gush out. It's
Smell that smell.
the minute the top's off, you just get the aroma. Just comes wafting out of it.
This is the 2012 bottle.
Now, Justin, as with most of the guests this season, you've provided us with this beer, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Was
That's
there
your
any
disclaimer
reason...
out of the way.
Yeah, disclaimer. just get that in there for this week's show, because we are an audio podcast and we don't need to write it anyway. Was there any reason? It's just going to go on and on, isn't it? That one. It's never going to end. Well, it will. It'll end next week.
Moving on.
Yeah, the question I was going to ask. Any reason for choosing the 2012 edition?
It's what I could get a hold of, but any edition would have done. I think I wanted to get an older one. 2012 was the year it was bottled, but this is as good as any. This is the 2012 came up. I've had the 2012. I know it's an excellent vintage, so I grabbed it. That was the only reason for getting it, and I bought a lot. So I gave you a couple of bottles, and I've got a lot for me. So
very good. Well, it pours out a lovely goldy amber, quite bubbly.
Very bubbly.
Lovely fresh aroma. Now, I had this beer as part of the 12 Beers of Christmas last year, and it was spot on then, and I expect it to be spot on tonight. So let's get into it, and then Justin, you can give us a little bit of education about this beer.
yeah, of course.
Right, cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. That's so easy to drink. So refreshing.
I love the winey notes on it, but then it's just a lovely, slightly sour, fresh, juicy banger, as they say.
Yeah, it is like that's a great call there, mate. On the winey notes, it's very, it's got that kind of feel to it in the mouth, but it is so light. It's so refreshing. There's hints of citrus around the edge, maybe a little bit of sherbet in there as well that just brings it alive. But yeah, just so drinkable. And it's 8% as well. Whoa, ridiculously
like
drinkable.
A big juicy fruity wine gum in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's the kind of beer that will turn the heads of both cider and wine drinkers, particularly white wine drinkers, to say, well, how is this a beer? And it's because it is just naturally. I mean, And I know from first hand, if you suffer from gout, not myself, but I went on a weekend in Belgium for a stag weekend with a friend who brought his father who suffered from gout, survived quite happily on lambic beers, didn't affect him once. So that was something interesting to note. So if you suffer from gout, this is the kind of beer you want to be going for, and it is absolutely delicious.
There you go. Feel like we should put another disclaimer in there that we don't give medical advice on this podcast, and please don't take Justin's word for it that this is a cure for gout.
I didn't say it was a cure. I just said it didn't exacerbate gout. I didn't say it was a cure for gout.
Now this is a Gueze, which means it's a blend of lambics.
Indeed.
I have done some research, so that's the extent of it. What can you tell us about Boon or Frankie?
I can tell you a bit about Boon. Yeah, Brewery Boon is the southernmost of the 11 official lambic brewers. Frank Boon had an interest in specialty beers from quite an early age, and he would drive around Belgium sampling these special beers. And in the early 70s, on one of his travels, he met René de Wit, a beer blender from Lambic, who sold this Gueze and a beer called Lambic Doux, which is a sweetened form of Lambic that he blended himself in his own cafe brewery. Frank purchased the brewery when René retired. The reason being that if someone was going to preserve this beer, it might as well be him. And he took over the Gueze blending outfit in 1978. The original brewery on the site goes back to 1680. And there's actually quite a lineage of it passing down from families to being sold on and other families taking it over. I could go on for ages, but I won't, as I often do. And in 1988, Boon, even I fell into it then, a nearby factory erected a new brew house. He faced logistical problems, so it was Palm Brewery, and that's helped me with their distribution. It's the only brewery, the lamb breweries, to have its own smithy and cooperage. And Frank Boon learned the trade from the last cooper in the area where the brewery is based. And it also has a fully automated bottling plant and bottles beer for third parties. Most notably, other lambic producers, Trois Fontaines and Gueze and Mort Subite, and the brewery is entirely, the new brew house was built in 2011. So I stumbled through that being lost mid-go. And that's the kind of show it is. And fittingly, with Mariage Parfait, it's a shame to say I did bribe Steve last night, but being on this show has been a real pleasure with you two, and it has worked. You two are a real perfect marriage, and that's what Mariage Parfait means. So, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Drink to that.
Cheers, Justin.
And you're our best man, Justin.
Thanks a lot, guys.
So this is a blend of 3-year-old lambic and new lambic, basically, isn't it? And then it's aged for 6 months or something.
That's right, in oak barrels. So it's an
Oh,
oak
for
age.
fuck's sake!
You didn't jump on that straight away, did you?
But you can age for 6 months, surely. If it's bottled,
You can.
this one's bottled, it's not in barrels.
It's re-fermented. It's continues to ferment in the bottle. It's not filtered or pasteurised in any way. So it's put straight into, when it's blended, it's put straight into the box after being left in oak barrels for 6 months. So you have got, and if you finish the beer and just let it dry in your mouth, you can get a little bit of that oak character.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get it? Yeah, just that little bit of vanilla and woody notes, just rattling around your mouth. Yeah, the sound.
I'll have to trust you on that one, mate.
I think the vanilla was the one that first jumped to my mind. Was just sort of like, going back there and having a feel. That's the one, and I kind of always associate that with oak barrels, and I don't know whether that's common or not, but for me that's the one that's the one flavour I always pick out of it.
I find it more. It comes through in the nose. It echoes in the palate and comes out through the nose, as opposed to going in on the aroma. It's This beer, I chose this beer. It is one of my favourite beers of all time. Back when I first started drinking beer and friends got into it, I would do beer tastings, and this would be one of the beers I would take along as an introduction to lambics, to sour beers, and to that whole genre, because it's not too acidic. It's very easy drinking. It appeals to a range of drinkers, and it's a classic.
Yeah, if we're talking about trying to get, as wide a cross section of people into good beer as possible, it's styles like this which will really appeal to cider drinkers, wine drinkers, people who want to get into beer but don't really like the malty bitter stuff.
These ones are brewed from Frank Bone's Special Reserve, so these are the ones that he picks out to age, and he tastes them and he separates these to be aged. But considering the age of this beer, it was bottled in 2012. Now, to put a 3-year-old beer, to get it to that point, that beer started to be brewed in 2009. So that's 7 years to come to this. So if you're a lambic beer brewer, it's not a get-rich-quick exercise.
No.
It's very much sit and wait and let the beer take care of itself.
Yeah, you're playing the long game a little bit, aren't you?
Absolutely you are.
Yeah. That's an interesting comment there, because one of the other new beer podcasts that's come up recently, and I bet you're going to pull me on my pronunciation of this as well. Belgian Smack.
Schmack, yeah, but yeah,
Schmack.
it's a brilliant podcast, well worth a listen, every single one.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the last one, but the one before, I think it was episode 3. He was chatting to, and I can't, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the brewery he was chatting to, but they had an accident in their brewery, and they were a lambic brewery. Yeah, and it essentially destroyed all of their stock, and the guy was talking about how it's not a quick and easy process to replenish all of that stock, because it takes so long to get the beer to where it's at.
Yeah, they had a problem with their thermostat, I believe, and they had bottles exploding everywhere.
Oh wow!
And they thought the brewery was finished, but I think the chaps, I don't know if he was his wife at the time, but she became his wife soon after. Said, "Hang on a minute, we can salvage this." He was in pieces. I can't remember the chap.
Yeah.
And
I think it's episode 3.
It's well worth a listen.
That podcast,
it's a hell of a story, that one.
I'll link through to it in tonight's show notes, so you can check the notes and click through. And if you've not already listened to it, as Justin said, and I would also recommend going in and giving that one a listen, because it does give you a great insight into just the time it takes to produce these sorts of beers.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's well worth going to. Excuse me, I'm just pouring myself some more.
Well, while you do that, and I've finished my beer. So, Steve, have you got any hop onions?
Opinions, please. This week.
No, fuck off. I've got two more of these podcasts to do. And there's hop onions all the way.
This week's opinions. I thought I'd go for something a little bit lighter this week. The last few weeks have been a little bit controversial, and people have had quite a vent. So I simply went for a what's your preferred size of pre-packaged beer? 330, 500 or 660 ml. Now, I thought it'd be a nice quiet one. Over 200 people got involved in this week's votes. Quite a lot of comments again. Coming out on top, though, by quite a margin. 56% of those voting went for 330 ml. 35% went for 500 ml and only 9% for 660 ml. Some of the comments that came in. Wayne at the Irish Beer Snob, depends on the ABV style. Like some in 500 ml and some in 330. 330 usually cheaper. I'm abstaining. I don't think by commenting, Wayne, you actually were abstaining. I think you were still having a view. But that was a by far the most popular opinion this week. Janice Dunn, Mrs. Beer Snob, Phil Kite, The Great Cubio, David Hamilton at Leaf Dave, Steve Russian at Steve Russian, and Mike Warwick at Welsh Mike all had similar comments about ABV and style very much influences them on size. Graham Solander at Solander Graham said, imagine if you will, for a moment. Magic Rock Cannonball in a 500ml can. Pair that with Thornbridge Halcyon in the 500ml bottle. That being said, 660ml of either of those would do him. I love that man very much. He's a man after my own heart. Beer is the answer. So Martin at NJPO007, very much in favour of 330ml at home, can or bottle. It means I can try a few more and store a few more. And again, a few people had that view. And then these last two comments I just think are brilliant. So Sparky Wright got involved this week, and his view was he wants a bucket for hot monsters and a thimble for sours. So, again, very much a man after my own heart. And then Miles Lambert, at Miles Lambert, our number one fan, depends on the beer. An Impy Stout at 660ml is a bit much, albeit for a Monday night in early August. Now, that was a bit of a lead-in comment because Miles will be on next week's show with a 660ml Impy Stout, so might have to pull him up on that one. So that was the views of Twitter this week. On that was their opinions. Justin, anything to add to any of that?
I am very similar to Martin. If I've got a 330, I can get more in my bag. I can get more in the fridge. And if I buy two, it doesn't matter if my wife nicks one. That's my opinion on that one.
Okay. Very to the point. Mark, do you just not care?
Of course I care. 330 for me all the way. I think that's the perfect size for me. Much like Justin and Martin, I can buy more if I want to, and I can fit more in the fridge. And it doesn't look like I'm a complete alcoholic when you open the fridge and see the top shelf lined with 330ml bottles rather than 500ml bottles. But
or top shelf lined with cans. Either.
Or cans, yeah. I do prefer cans. Cans are my preferred vessel of choice, really. What's funny, though, is when I saw this opinion come up, and I did vote, I did participate to some extent, Stephen. It's way back in the early days of this podcast when we were used to drinking the real ale and the bottles coming out in 500ml. When we started experiencing and adventuring into those breweries that had 330ml bottles, you were complaining because you didn't get enough beer. Do you remember that?
I do, and that's probably still my view to this day. Actually, I've got two sides to this one. One of my views is, and I mule a lot of beer around.
Yes.
For me, I like a 330ml can because you can pack them in. You don't have to worry about them so much, and they balance out quite nicely in a backpack as well. So in terms of logistics, 330ml cans are perfect. But going back to Graham's comment, quite often a 330ml can of Cannonball simply isn't enough, and I want more. So I would love
just
to
have
see
another
big
can.
cans. Well, yeah, I could have another can. Or Magic Rock could do the job for me, and they could give me 500ml cans of Cannonball.
Well, if you saw the tweet from Miles this week where he tweeted a picture of a 500ml can that I think may have been, I don't know who it was, but it was beautiful. The artwork was really showing off.
It's the 4 Pure juice box.
Yeah, and it looked amazing. This is nice big tall. In America they have the tall boys, so you can get the nice big cans. But I mean, it looked proper special.
Yeah. So we didn't really resolve anything there. I think generally it would seem as though the popular opinion is 330ml wins every time. Still get involved in this, folks. Let us know your thoughts using the hashtag opinions, and keep your eye out next week for what will be our last opinions. So better make it a good one to go out on.
Or let me know your thoughts by using the hashtag hopunions.
Now people can let you know their thoughts using hop
The other
onions.
opinion is that a 330, if you've got a 330 and the beer's not up to much, you've only really had a taster. So you can discard that and move on. And if you want to have your Halcyons in pints, you can go and have your Halcyons in pints at the Magic Rock tap.
No one's rushing out to buy 500 mils of Green King IPA anytime soon, are they?
No,
Let's be honest.
Well, I think many people are, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, and I'm guessing those are the sorts of people that don't listen to the podcast, mate.
Right. Our penultimate empty box, Steve. Who's getting the prizes prize this week?
It was a tough one this week. I didn't enter a stunning picture of my own this week, so I can't moan about not being able to choose my own picture this week. But the one that did stand out for me, and it's an absolute plug here as well while I'm at it, is a picture of the recently released Flavour of the Month featuring Magic Rock Common Grounds. Great picture of the can and the beer in a glass on a bed of coffee beans from another, and just keeping it local this week, another Essex loyalist that follows the show. Sean Smith at Plim Sean is this week's winner of the penultimate Great Big Box of Nothing. Will be winging its way all the way up to Halstead in this next week. And if you want to have a go at entering for one last time for next week's final studio show, get your picture up on Instagram, use the hashtag #CheersGuys, and you may very well be the recipient of the last ever Great Big Box of Nothing.
Right, do we have any final comments on this Mariage Parfait from Brewery Boon? Thanks, Boon.
I think if you haven't had this and you're a bit worried about drinking sour beer, or if you like a cider, or you're worried about that sort of beer, this is a perfect introduction to it. I've taken lots of people on the journey with this particular beer, not this particular vintage, but this beer, and say, take this, taste this, you've had nothing like it, and I've not had one person that says that's absolutely disgusting. So give it a try if you haven't. That would be my tip.
Very well said, yeah. I think my wife would like this. I would never leave enough in the glass for her to try it, but I think if I ever did, she would quite like it. It's lovely and light and got these lovely vinous, grapey aromas on there, and it's just the right level of sourness. It's not too sour at all, but it's got the right pitch of it, I think. And it's a beautiful Gueze. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, as it's beginning to warm in the glass a little bit, I'm getting maybe a little bit more tartness towards the end of it. Something a little bit more reminiscent of maybe some raspberries, some dark fruit, which is just adding a little bit more to it, and it's just changing in the glass as it warms. Echo both of your comments. It's a great gateway beer to wine or cider drinkers that you want to try and introduce to different things. Absolutely spot on for me. Really enjoyed it.
Very good. Many thanks to Ales by Mail, Beautiful Beers, Beer Merchants, Ebria and Hop Burns and Black, who all now offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners on any beers from their website. Just go to the website at beeroclockshow.co.uk, click on the Season 10 beer list and scroll to the bottom for your discount codes. Justin, thank you once again and for the final time for being a part of the Beer O'Clock Show family, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you over the last few years.
And you. Andrew, mate, it's a sad time, but I will be there on the 4th. So,
jolly good.
4th of August. So you haven't seen the last of me yet, but I'll keep the trap shut.
Cheers, Justin.
If I can.
And where can people find you online, pal?
1970s Boy on Twitter. masonjust.blogspot.com. Get beer, drink beer on the internet if you want to read my blog. Instagram 1970s Boy. Just if you want to use that hashtag, random bloke off Twitter, you might find me as well.
You're still using that?
It's still on there.
Very good. There's a long. If people who don't know that joke, there's a long history behind that. So listen back to the podcast. Right, what's coming up next week, Steve?
Mate, it's our last ever studio show next week. It's going to be a sad evening, I feel, but it's only fitting to feature as our final guest to see out this series. Our longest running number one fan, Marvel's Lambert, will be with us, and he's going to see us off in style with a beer that, mate, I'm sure you're going to be all over. It's a bourbon barrel-aged stout,
of course,
from Almasty Brewing, and it seems only fitting to be finishing the studio shows at least, because there is still one more show after that with a great big bloody beer. That's all I can say, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Are there any tickets left for the Hot Burns and Black event?
Hot Burns and Black is sold out and has
Ooh.
been for at least a week now
Wow.
as well. I do think they are doing a waiting list if people are still interested, because they know they often get a few people return a few days before. But if you can't get in, they've already increased the capacity once to put a few more people in the shop. It's going to be a great night. It's going to all be recorded for posterity as well, and we'll be putting that out the week after next week's show as the last ever Beer O'Clock show.
Yeah, that is August 4th at 7 p.m. at Hot Burns and Black in Peckham, Dulwich, if you want to get on their waiting list. Otherwise, next week, Miles with some bottle of something or other. Right. Justin, thanks again, mate.
Yeah, cheers, Justin.
Cheers, guys.
Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support as well, mate. You've been a
You're
star.
very welcome to it. Yeah, look forward to the next chapter, wherever it may go.
And Stevie, until next week.
It's been the highlight of my week.
And mine. Bye-bye.